Hi, good morning. I'm Matt Brown, the Executive Director of ORS Three Rivers, which is the watershed organization for the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord Rivers.
Thanks, Bryce.
Hey, Bryce Dubois, College of the Holy Cross.
Kate.
Kate McPherson, Save the Bays, Narragansett Bay River Keeper.
Phyllis.
Phyllis Shapentia, President, Manchog Pond Foundation.
Vincent, do we have your audio?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear.
Okay.
Vincent Tai, Stormwater Coordinator for Tenerife Road.
Thanks. Erin.
Hi, everyone. It's Erin from Senator Reed's office.
Nick.
Morning, this is Nick Cohen, Horsley Witten Group.
Sarah.
Good morning, this is Sarah from the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission.
Is there anyone that I missed in person or online? Great. So our meeting's a little bit, oh, we have one more joining. I'll give her 1 second. Our meeting's a little bit different today. Instead of kind of going through all of our different updates in the beginning and then kind of having a brief presentation, we're sharing this meeting with the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program because when we asked you a couple meetings ago what was important to you and what you wanted to focus on, we heard that you wanted to really spend time on these watershed priorities and you really wanted to help guide what this work was going to look like as a watershed. And it's perfect timing because NBP is also creating their new CCMP, Coastal Conservation Management Plan?
Comprehensive conservation.
There we go. I'm hiding it from myself here. Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan. So this is a really great opportunity for the Blackstone to kind of say, this is what's going on for us and what's important. And I'll let Darcy get into that in just a second. We had 2 others join us. If you wanted to introduce yourselves, Dana.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Dana Bauer. I'm a research scientist at the Marsh Institute, which is where the collaborative is based. And I'm looking for ideas on my next research project.
Thanks for joining us, Dana. And David.
Hi, I'm David Tapscott. I'm just a very interested observer from Uxbridge from the central part of the Narragansett Bay region.
Thanks, David. Okay, so from here, I'm going to hand it over to Darcy and she'll walk us through the CCMP and what we're doing today.
Great. Thank you, Steph. And should I drive it from up there or do you want to
You
say?
can if you want. I'm just going to steal my notebook here.
Okay.
Actually, did it hurt?
Sounded really bad. Okay. Well, first, thank you all, and especially thanks to Stephanie and Kaylee for sharing this meeting with us today. I think, Stephanie described it perfectly. We thought this was a great opportunity to talk about, one of our most important watersheds in the context of the Narragansett Bay watershed as a whole. So the title of this 10-year strategic plan that we've been working on for about 5 years now, since before I started with the program, is called the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan for the Narragansett Bay region. And many of you here are in our steering committee or otherwise participate in our committees. And you've probably heard this being called Vision 2032, Vision 2034. We've kind of kept moving the deadline out as, as we've kept working. And I'll give you kind of an update on where we are with the process a little bit later on. But just to kick us off, so the CCMP, this document, is something that we have to do as one of the 28 national estuary programs around the US. So every estuary program has to have one of these documents in order to get our annual funding from EPA. Ours is a little bit overdue. We were supposed to complete it probably in 2022, but it's okay. So the point of this plan is to be a coordinated and holistic plan to inform the delivery of our partnership services over the next 10 years. Some estuary programs take a really big vision of this plan where they kind of they put in everything that everyone in the entire watershed is doing for the bay. We thought we would take a somewhat narrower view and try to focus on really what our partnership organizations could do together to provide our services. And so this plan looks at, what are the roles of our partner organizations? What are the potential funding sources? And really, what are our priorities over the next 10 years? So hold on, I'm going to try to just minimize that one. So these are the 4 chapters that we have in the CCMP right now, which is water, people, habitat, and public spaces. And this is how we want to structure the discussion today, is by going through each of these. And, this slide is just showing you across all of our official committee partners. So this is our steering committee, our science advisory committee, our executive committee, all the different organizations across the watershed that we have working together that we hope to include in this plan. And in terms of our region, I know that most of you are familiar with it. We're way up here at the headwaters, but we also work all the way over to Brockton and then even all the way down here in Stonington, Connecticut. So we are a tri-state watershed. And so, when we're looking at this big of an area, we have to think about what kinds of projects are we trying to put in this document and keep it manageable. So what we usually do with the CCMP is to look at projects that are either going to impact the whole region or whole study area, which is, if I say study area, I'm referring to that whole region, state, an estuary watershed, or a river watershed. So local projects, like site-specific projects, we usually identify in our annual work plans, or partners will identify them when they respond to RFPs. But in terms of the projects we want to talk about today, it's really kind of the watershed-wide sorts of projects. The other thing I wanted to mention is, for the first time, we as an organization are trying to work through this idea of pursuing some shared quantifiable targets across the watershed. So these are both ecosystem targets as well as targets for how we want to work together as a partnership. And what I mean by that is, for example, you could say we want to have, 3,000 acres of salt marsh across the region by this date. So we've just started broaching this conversation with our partners, and we haven't had these kinds of watershed-wide goals in the past. And we think that they could be a really important way for us to work together and communicate what we're trying to do as a partnership. So actually, during our last steering committee meeting, we had folks prioritize what kinds of topics they might be most interested in setting targets for. And it was really interesting. There were a couple that were kind of more organizational, like talking about having data and information available in accessible formats that are useful for management. And also making sure that people and organizations that are doing this work have increased capacity, increased funding, increased staff to actually address these issues. And then there were 3 environmental ecosystem targets that people are interested in, that being estuarine water quality, fish passage, or really kind of aquatic connectivity as a whole. And then access to water, and that's both estuaries and rivers. So this kind of just, I think for me, this really gave me a really good sense of what people want to work on together and how they see the estuary program at the moment, and what they see our strengths as. So this document that we're talking about today is this one on the top, that CCMP, but we have a few other core documents that you might be familiar with. Back in 2017, we published this State of Narragansett Bay and its Watershed Technical Report, which is getting a little bit old now. A lot of those data only go up to about 2015. So it's looking to be about 10 years old. We call that our Status and Trends Report. So it has 24 different indicators of ecological health throughout the watershed, and a few for public health as well. And so we're actually looking to republish that in 2027, hopefully with a few additional social indicators as well, which is really exciting. So that informs the CCMP, because this is really how we measure things. This is kind of saying, here's where we are now, and here's where the trend is going. But in the past, it hasn't had any goals or targets. There hasn't been any real report card-y feel to this report. And then we have a bunch of supplemental plans that are less interesting and I won't talk about. Those are things we just kind of have to do. So in terms of today's meeting, I mean, Steph set it up. Really, what we're looking for is your thoughts on priority Blackstone region watershed projects, opportunities, and needs over the next 10 years. And what we would like to do is, to the best of our ability, connect these ideas to the structure, not only of the CCMP, but also the Blackstone Needs Assessment Report. So it's really kind of a revisiting of that report that you all have used as a guidepost over the past few years. And what would be really helpful is getting to some specifics so that we can really write these priorities into our CCMP as tasks, things that we say, yes, we want to do this. So it's helpful to get feedback like, you know, we need to work on connectivity. But I think to the extent that we can think a little bit more specific, like what are the things we really need to do to push on connectivity? Is it just getting funding for projects, or are there other things we need to do as well? So, let's see, those of you who are in the room, you should have picked up one of these. If you don't have one, just raise your hand and we can pass it. Okay. Okay, and then Kaylee, could you put this in? Awesome, thank you. Okay, so what you have in front of you is a list of the current actions for the CCMP. It's about 30 to 32, depending on how we lump and split things. You don't have to necessarily look at this in great detail. I just wanted you to have it as a background for some of the specifics that'll come up. Generally, things are bucketed into 4 categories. We have a people chapter that is going to head the whole CCMP, and that we did intentionally as a result of feedback we've heard from partners for years now about how really our biggest stumbling block to getting more projects in the ground is capacity. And you know, that's people, that's funding, that's policies, that's public engagement. So all those sorts of things, that's information as well. So all those sorts of things are going to be in that people chapter. Let's see, next, of course, we have a water chapter. That's pretty simple. Things are bucketed into stormwater, wastewater, and then we put trash pollution in there, mainly because we were struggling with where to put it. And I think with our program, it's like we care about the trash once it's in the water. So that's where we put it. And then habitats, again, kind of self-explanatory, bucketed into estuary, freshwater, and upland. And then we have a public spaces chapter, which is about access to all of the natural resources in the watershed. Okay, with that, I'll pause there and see if anybody has questions before we dive in. Awesome. So, Steph helped me put this slide together, thank you so much, which crosswalks the needs assessment priorities against each of the chapters. So this is the people chapter. And Steph, do you want to talk about how you bucketed these?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're not perfect buckets, but what this one in particular, this first chapter, I have in 3 different. One is kind of addressed, we're doing this. It doesn't mean that you don't need to continue doing it. I would love to be maintained. Kaylee and I would love to have continued salaries and you know, do this. It's not like a one and done. But doing the watershed corner, establishing the collaborative, like, good job, y'all. You're showing up, we're doing this. An education strategy that informs and energizes public, that was created really specifically written around the ZAP anniversary. So we did that. It was really successful. I'm kind of crossing it off because we have 20 things and it's really nice to cross things off. And then maximizing effectiveness of the long-term monitoring programs. That's not done, but it's definitely a big chunk of it. So one of our big goals for that was creating a new website and this clickable map. Both of those are underway. The website's fantastic. The clickable map is there. We're still working on making that data, I think, a little bit more accessible from the Blackstone River Coalition and making sure that we have the ability to analyze it as we get more data. But I know that NBP is doing a great job in helping with that as well. So all of those are kind of like, we're working on this, we're doing good. there's not necessarily a ton more that we need to consider and add in here. The ongoing ones on the bottom, I don't think those are ever really going to be done. So a watershed-wide fundraising plan, updating local regulations to focus on LID nature-based solutions, and then coordinated advocacy. Those are, don't really check them off, but we're definitely working on that. The unstarted ones for both this chapter and the others really could go one of two ways. It might be, we really need funds and capacity to focus on this, or it might be the collaborative hasn't really focused on it because we don't have the expertise and maybe it's best for someone else. So the ones in this block are Green Jobs Program on infrastructure maintenance, a bridge funding program to help munis think about protecting undeveloped land more quickly and jumping at that opportunity. And that's really more for Rhode Island, because in Massachusetts, we have some opportunities for that, like the, what's the acronym? Used for 3 different things. CPA, Community Preservation Act, is a way for communities to have funding and then quickly use those for land protection. And then the last is recognizing developers that focus on sustainable development. So a question for you might be, are those things that we still want to work on? Are those things that we're saying those are not priorities anymore? Should we get going on those? But I'd love to kind of hear your feedback there. And then what else are we missing that maybe isn't specifically called out in the needs assessment report that you think is important to fall under this people chapter? And online, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Well, Peter.
Started Green Jobs Program, green infrastructure. That is such an opportunity, but that takes all of these take the capacity. And so that really takes the capacity and passion for youth, which I know John has. And Keith, and so if you structured their cleanups with urban youth, which they already do, but it's just like hit and miss. And so it's, can you document? And they do, and they don't, because they don't spend the time publicizing all the good work that they do. But how to create that network? Is it a VIP program under keeping the environment clean? So tap into other people's capacities to deal with youth, because that's a full-time job. And it's like, so, but yes, it's we need a key partners, or that's a.
Yeah. So the one I always think of with this is the Worcester Green Corps. This is what they do. And I've encouraged them to, maybe focus more on that green infrastructure element. And I've helped them write a couple different grants, but they never ended up getting quite over the finish line and submitted. So it feels like one of those tasks that's peripheral for everyone and not main course for anyone.
I guess the challenge back on that, it's at one level, it's hard to teach someone to be a gardener and identify a weed. It's relatively easy to teach elementary school kids to pick up litter versus a technical job. You want folk tech and working with engineers in the DPW. So what's your audience?
Yeah. I think that was written more for like specifically green infrastructure maintenance, but it could be something else. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just on that same item. I'm just thinking about how that could look more about like partnership building rather than something new that everyone in the space has to do. I'm particularly thinking of partnerships with the technical high schools in the watershed, and hosting 2 students from Worcester Tech for their co-op, and it's been a wonderful experience. And yeah, providing those on-ramps and thinking about the different groups within this collaborative. How can we build partnerships and provide like hands-on opportunities for youth in the technical high schools?
How many technical high schools are there in the watershed?
I don't know.
Rhode
There's
Island.
Blackstone Valley Tech and there's Worcester Tech, and in Rhode Island, I'm sure there's at least 1 or 2.
One in Woonsocket.
Yes, there's 4 or 5 altogether.
They may have environmental tracks. It'd be worth finding out.
With the MVP grant funding, we are still seeing a lot of green infrastructure requests. And so there's a lot of, not a ton of communities, but several communities, either designing or installing green stormwater infrastructure. And as part of that, you know, with our program, we want to see some education or community engagement. And so when I talk to communities kind of in the off season, the off grant season, you know, we try to figure out, you know, what can you do within a year with state funding that will allow you to bring this green jobs idea closer to fruition. And so we have, I think it was, it's an M town. I can't think of it right this second.
Is that?
Not well, Medford has one in their parks, and they put together with the Charles River Watershed Association a bunch of kind of elementary school education, but also they have they put together a great operations and maintenance plan. So on the MVP website, we really highlight that because they've got pictures of the different weeds that you would be looking for. And it specifically shows you the parts of a rain garden and has a checklist of, you know, when and what you do. And then right now in Fitchburg, they're also trying to implement a whole bunch of different green stormwater infrastructure types. So they've got education going out to their high school. They've got, I think, something going on with their DPW department. So I think a lot of these different deliverables that we get with the grant might be able to help feed into this. And, you know, I guess I'd be happy to be a connector in that realm. But I think it's really important because so many programs and so many, you know, funding opportunities focus on this green infrastructure to infiltrate, and we're seeing it go in all over the place, and we're also seeing, you know, the plants dying and
Maintains.
Yeah.
you know, it's not being maintained. Like people are letting their dogs walk. Whoops. I'm speaking with my hands too much. So yeah, just trying to figure out who's doing what. Right. I think it's a great idea.
Bryce made the comment online. I don't know if you want to come off mute, Bryce.
Yeah, really appreciate the conversation. Also appreciate the emphasis on green jobs. I guess I tend more towards thinking about the organizations in, especially Rhode Island, but you know, throughout the watershed that already have the expertise of doing job training coordination, and thinking about the opportunity for all of the things that have just been said about the different spaces that could be leveraged, and also the different careers. The ways in which we were thinking about that, right, is we might be able to influence those job training programs to incorporate that into their portfolio of work, as opposed to us trying to develop a new, you know, job training coordination model. So I just think about that as a sort of more sustainable model for us to influence the job training programs to really think explicitly about this sort of green jobs movement. And so I just gave two examples of RI-based groups that do that work.
Yeah, thanks. And Paul also mentioned a student project last year from the Water Resource something center.
Yeah, that's right. It's the Water Resources Outreach Center. So
Outreach
I call it short. That yeah, we had a student project that worked with the city of Worcester. Carrie Reed was the sponsor at the time, and she's to another location. But yeah, the idea was to try to promote student projects and green jobs, and you know, there's a link with some materials that was really just used for education. So I'm not sure if this would be helpful. Hopefully, it would be helpful. So something to take a look at in that area.
Is there a way of listing what a green job is?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Say green job, I don't.
Yeah, for sure.
That is a very good question.
So I know the WPI project talked about the different forms of green jobs. For what was written, it was creating a program to help green infrastructure maintenance. It was specifically like maintaining rain gardens, building rain gardens, doing low impact development. But a green job could really be anything. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to spend all of our time just in the one green jobs thing. And I feel like the summary is more of what Bryce mentioned of, I think it's more important to find who's doing it and encourage them to do more of it versus having us try and create a new program. I can tell you I will fail if I try and do it. It's just not my area of expertise. And it's, you know, it's a balance for our two staff anyway of trying to do the things that we do well versus trying to do everything. So does anyone have feedback on any of the other pieces here of you should work on something, or this is really important, keep doing it, or reduce
Just
focus?
very quickly on 18, a program to recognize developers. We thought we could do that with a good housekeeping seal of approval and ask somebody to do a certain minimum things. You get into challenges, who gets it, who deserves it. But having said that, we should be recognizing good development in the valley. Our challenges, I'm looking around, I don't see something. So, but it's a constant effort. We should be encouraging those who are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I wonder if, I guess, linking that with the green jobs or focusing on green infrastructure maintenance, if there's a way to recognize certain landscape or garden professionals that are doing this work, installing rain gardens, maintaining them, and kind of raise them up and have them show others how to do it.
Free publicity, they like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easier on my
It's
end.
like, hey, who's already doing this?
Talk it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. I like that. Anything else on this people chapter?
Free to spend plenty of time on this. I mean, we've got time, and this is really, I think this is where most of the needs assessment tasks are anyway. So
Dangerous question, but I noticed in the NBP, it was new to me. People, open spaces, which to me opened up a whole lot of things, which I totally support. But now looking at our existing, where do the public spaces fit in our 20 identities, if not under this topic? So, but I don't think we ever identified it because we never thought we had the luxury, or that's, like a greenway planning or bikeway, that is that recreation, or is it, it's access to the water?
That's a good question. Is it better for us to go through where all the different
we can do that.
things fit and then come back?
Yep.
Maybe?
Yep. Okay, so the other ones are smaller, so less to read. Okay, this is the water chapter. We've just got a couple. Support for planning and installation of LID practices and studying surface water flow to identify existing and future flow challenged areas.
So as a heads up, I put it under unstarted, but we have written grants to do that. They just haven't gotten the grants yet and haven't heard back. But that's like a really big one for me.
Yeah. Well, and it's, we were talking about this yesterday. That's really good for us to know because that so far the CCMP actions we have here are not super flow focused. So I think that's actually, that's a great thing to come out of this conversation. Okay, habitats. We've got wetland restoration strategy for the Blackstone. Target projects that are meeting specific criteria for coordinated action at the watershed scale. Support for permanent land protection. Preconditions for fish passage on the lower Blackstone, and advancing aquatic connectivity projects from headwaters to estuary. And then lastly, we have, this is the public spaces chapter. Accelerating management of water chestnut. Free and equitable access to use and benefit from waterways, new sections of the Blackstone River Bikeway, Greenway, and increasing maintenance of waterways for wildlife recreation and safety.
Well, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And we struggled with how to chunk up these chapters too. For a while, we didn't have a public spaces chapter. It was kind of hidden in people and habitat, but it felt so important. And whenever we would do a public survey, public access would come out as people's first priority for what they wanted more of. All right, so let's back up. Peter.
Go back up because I wanted to comment on the surface water.
Oh, sure.
To me, that is critical because it impacts the water quality. The Blackstone is a flashy river to begin with, the issue of impoundments, but more importantly, from water supply, we are at capacity, and we've had to fight the city of Shrewsbury as they're trying to tap out more. And that's not a comfortable position to be in. But we're at the limits, and you know,
Yeah, the flashiness in particular, I'm really interested in. And I feel like a lot of the decisions that are made around the river in terms of we have a river, we have a canal. How do they intersect and how do they affect one another? And we don't really understand that. We have towns that are putting in boards and taking out boards to manage the canal, just as kind of like a trying to do the right thing, and reduce flooding in their communities. And when we paddled the river 2 years ago, the main stem went dry for 2 miles because we think the water got diverted into the canal. But having a better understanding of just the baseline hydrology of how does the canal and the dams affect the flow of the river, where are we seeing droughts and floods, and where can we anticipate those better and have better management of avoiding those impacts, and also thinking about, well, what if we took out this dam, what would happen, right? That baseline for me is definitely important.
Where those green infrastructure projects are helpful too.
Yeah. So maybe I'll also mention as kind of a background, I think you guys mostly have heard this and know, but we are applying for a 604B grant to create a watershed-based plan with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission and Horsley Witten. And we're hoping that with this large-scale watershed-based plan, we can maybe not identify really specific areas in BMPs, but have a better idea of like, okay, we know that there are a lot of flows coming in from X, Y, and Z, and here are 6 different BMPs we hope to install watershed-wide. This is the general water quality benefit that we would get from those, and then we can kind of dive in a little bit later to decide where exactly those live, but that would give us this overview so that then we can determine where to put these different BMPs. And by doing this at a watershed scale, we're trying to like bring all the different communities on the same level playing field of being able to apply for 319 implementation grants. And provided that we get funding from DEP for the Massachusetts side, we would then request funding from folks like Darcy and the SNAP network to do it on the Rhode Island side and really have a watershed-wide plan.
As far as number 12, other partners are doing this.
Definitely.
For instance, the City of Worcester's Sustainability and Department of Sustainability and Resilience is having a summit on May 11th, and it's really focused on low impact development, on rain gardens specifically, and Miyawaki forests. They're building one in the Worcester Public Library parking lot. So partners are moving forward and educating about these programs.
Absolutely.
BMPs. So
We'll actually be planting that day if people want to go get their hands dirty.
Would us, because I noticed under people chapter models, would that be like kind of looking at like a flow impact of like how far down, like say Worcester CSO reaches, or any other overflows that end up happening? Yeah, CSO is a great question. That's a whole other topic. But would love to model that. What are the long-term cumulative impacts of CSO? And thanks to NPS, actually, we recently met with USGS and asked that question, and we got an answer of no one's studying that. No one's ever studied that. So we're also very interested in that and recently wrote it into a grant proposal. So fingers crossed.
I think one thing that could get linked into a lot of almost every section of this is economic benefits as well. And I think that that's one thing that's missing from a lot of the discussions, is actually telling not only the municipalities, but also the people why not only is it great to have a clean river because it's cleaner, but why it'll help them at the end of the day. We have a lot of communities within the watershed that are more about trying to survive than worrying really about CSOs.
I don't know if we have still have Dana on the call, but she's an economist and she's looking for projects, so.
Bingo.
I know with our water quality program, the question everybody asks is like, can I go swimming and can I fish? And that's the thing.
Yeah, and I save money on my YMCA membership.
Yeah,
I just go
exactly.
swimming in the Blackstone.
Yeah.
Just putting a plug in there for that, the monetary, non-monetary benefits is of real interest to the larger SNEP program too. So yeah, if there really are, if Dana really does want to work on a project, that definitely aligns with this.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I think you're right for all of these. I mean, I always want it for fish passage, right? Like I wish I am not the person to do it, but I would love for someone to say, this is the economic reason why we want fish passage. I can tell you the general, right? But I can't actually like give you numbers. Yeah, designing.
Yeah, I would add to that, like green infrastructure for reducing flooding impacts and adaptation.
Have an economic benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one I feel like maybe has been done and we just need to compile it. And I
Well,
wonder,
the state of Massachusetts just issued how many million, the flooding on Route 20, and
Yeah.
the suspicion it's caused by the increased imperviousness of the area. It was always a problem, right? But it's now can't be ignored anymore. So.
I also, and I don't know this, but is there any type of financial incentive for these developers through any of these programs to develop with green infrastructure?
you need really strong boards and commissions to push back. That's my personal opinion. So the regulations in Massachusetts, I know much better, say you have to consider low impact development and you have to say why you did or didn't use it. But if they're checking the box, like, yes, I considered it, they technically have met that requirement. And unless you have strong boards and commissions saying, how did you consider it? Why didn't you choose it? Tell me more about your soils. I don't think you tried hard enough. Then they're not going to do it. And let me tell you, when you're that person pushing back, they really hate you. It's like a very challenging position to be in because they throw their lawyers and their engineers at you and you feel dumb. You really do. So the hard part about that is that you need to have people who feel like super confident and smart and pushy about it and knowledgeable. And then you have to do that every single year to every single municipality because people leave and change jobs and they're volunteers.
Could that be linked in with like a Concom training program?
It's there. It's definitely, yeah. MACC does this. Mass Land Trust Coalition does this.
CPTC
He does this.
training. Yeah.
I mean,
but they don't teach that. That's like an ethical question. That's like how do you give backbone? And people aren't how many years learning? I've spent how many years training? I'm kind of comfortable, but no, still, I'm not an engineer. And if you question an engineer, they take that personally.
They're so good at
Go
it.
to the engineer themselves.
Some are greener than others. Yes, you want to.
Yeah, but at the end, they
I have to say, please don't make that assumption for all engineers about that.
Is there an association of engineers that would be a good target group to try to get more on board so that they convince their employers, their developers to be more collaborative and supportive?
maybe we need more youth on our conservation commission.
Yes, in Worcester, you had a young, he was, that's right.
Yeah.
That'll happen naturally.
I mean, part of it's a capacity issue with municipalities, right? We don't have enough staff. I'm super excited that the city of Worcester just hired their first ever assistant conservation planner. Like, gosh, that would have been nice. Yeah. So, good for you guys in doing that. But some municipalities don't have any conservation planners still. And so you don't have this staff person to help you do that research and back you up. Makes it harder. So I think municipal capacity on this, I think state capacity for DEP to offer more oversight or circuit rider support in Rhode Island having something similar.
And I wonder too if there are other simple resources that we could provide conservation commissions.
Good question.
Like I always think about you know, the historic USGS maps that show you where all the wetlands were before we started developing all the wetlands. And like, if there was a way to have a map of like priority wetland areas in like a lot of the headwaters or whatever, and like thinking about how to start restoring.
Love having
or-
Google Maps as Concom. You can get historical
Yeah.
pictures and say, so it's getting there, yes.
Maybe linking to Biomap and those, because they have a lot of resources per municipality. And sorry, this is like very Massachusetts specific for that, but
Well, the challenge in Rhode Island is to beef up the local Concom. There's an entity there, but they have no power, so.
yeah.
But some are doing good stuff. I know Cumberland was.
Yeah, and I know MACC is looking at wetlands regulations and giving local commissions some wording and arguments on how to beef them up using climate change as a.
No, that just reminds me, Heidi mentioned, and we're gonna share that. Kayla can find it for us. DEP is changing some of the regulations and it's open for public comment right now. And so Mass Audubon has worked with other partners to create like a form letter that you can just go on their website and put in your name and address, and it automatically sends it off so that you don't have to write your own letter, which is so helpful. So we'll share that in the chat and we'll put it in the follow-up for you all if you want to provide feedback.
It is going to put a whole lot more opportunities for Concoms to participate and have more authority. But back to the comments, I know the BRWC has like a state authority to comment on certain projects. It's like a formal standing. So I think we need to encourage everyone to have informal standing. Anyone can make any comments on. People have to feel, if you can, talking points are always a good thing to share, you know, let them write their own letters.
And Kate, not to put you on the spot, I don't know if you want to come off mute. I think that's also a very important comment.
Sure. It's actually, it's hard to see you all because the screen share is up, so it's a little disorienting. All right, good. There we go. Yeah, so in Rhode Island, the way I understand it works is once, like we're talking about low impact development, a developer could choose to use low impact development, and those are techniques like instead of making every lot 2 acres, you make every lot a little bit smaller, you have shorter driveways, and then you have like a common conservation space. So if you have a 50-acre parcel and you want to put 5 houses on it instead of 5 10-acre parcels, you've got 5 1-acre parcels, and then a significant chunk of land that's conserved. That's what I think of when I think of low impact development. And then in Rhode Island, it's been required for probably about 10 years now. Even single family development needs to address stormwater. So things like infiltration trenches, dry wells, rain gardens. The problem is always that somebody buys the house, doesn't know what the heck this weedy rain garden is, and then they just fill it in and, put a lawn in. Typically for a subdivision, it's handled in like a bigger stormwater system that gets maintained. There's a decent procedure for that. The homeowners association needs to be responsible for maintaining that. It's written into the permit, and that permit is recorded in the land evidence record. So Rhode Island DEM on paper looks at all the wetland impacts on a case-by-case individual basis, and then also looks at stormwater. Even if it's not near wetlands, if it's over an acre of development, RIPDES is going to look at the stormwater. The problem is enforcement. There's virtually non-existent stormwater enforcement in Rhode Island. And I know because I call in really egregious stormwater violations, especially when it's been so wet for so long, many, many months. And those little perimeter, we've all seen them, the little perimeter silt fence erosion controls, they get blown out super easily, even if they were installed correctly, which most of them aren't. And it's a huge mess to clean up. And DEM often says, don't even bother cleaning it up. You're going to wreck the forest cleaning it up. So I'm not sure what role the conservation commissions in Rhode Island has other than working with the town planners and the review boards at the town level to try and get better projects to DEM.
brings up a question I had for you all, Massachusetts specific. In Rhode Island, we've been talking about, stormwater financing and reviving this idea of, fee structures that could either be at a municipal level or some other level, depending on what makes sense. I'm wondering if there have been similar conversations about that in Massachusetts, or if you're kind of finding other ways to get it done.
I know that Mass Rivers put on a stormwater financing event or series or something. Yeah, training. Yeah. So yeah, that exists.
I know I am so excited that an engineer, Jeff Howland from Shrewsbury, is now hired by CMRPC because I think he was instrumental in our suit against, or no, our appeal against DEP for withdrawal from Poor Farm Brook against Shrewsbury. That forced the town of Shrewsbury to go through and classify all their credits for stuff, a major balancing. So after a couple years of that, lo and behold, the Board of Health issued a stormwater utility tax. So it's like, but it has not happened. It has not been discussed. I'm hesitate to bring up the word a rain tax, the politics of it, but it happened because it worked. They'd already done the effort. You had a knowledgeable engineer, Paul, who had the vision, and then a supportive Board of Health that said this is a way to get some monies, and it just slipped through, no publicity and no talk. And so
interesting. We have communities that talk more about that, and the SNAP network, I know, does a great job on stormwater financing. That's one of their expertise. But we did a stormwater training series with SNAP network, and Shrewsbury was a part of that, and we were like, we just kept Vincent was like the champion there because all the other communities could make like, all right, we should do a BMP here, and this is the design for it. And then it kind of stopped there. But Shrewsbury was like, great, now we're implementing 2 of these and we have the funds in hand to do it. So they'll be there next month. It was a totally different experience for that one community because they had that
just a little money to
enterprise fund.
get it done. More than that, it's ownership. They know their system. It's like the city is invested. They know their stormwater, but is there grunts? No, it's easier for them not to really take state monies because they have the control. But if you can get costs, which is going that way, it's a sewer costs, right? It's a water costs. It's legitimate costs that can pay for improvements to the system and should, because improvements, it's an ongoing need for monies to upgrade. So it's the economics have to work, right?
So we've kind of broken it up into these different things, but another way of thinking about it is, forget anything that we said, what's important to you. And if you had $10 million to spend on a project, I was going to say $1 million, but I feel like $1 million doesn't get you as far as it used to, which is sad. You have $10 million to spend on a project in the watershed, a theme, a topic. What do you do with it? What's your like burning need that you would love to have addressed? Fish passage, is dam removal? Is it replacing all the culverts? Is it getting access on every point? Is it something I'm not
in the bikeway?
Yes.
Making the bikeway happen
all along the river.
I feel like that's so great to get more people actually traveling the whole way. That would lead towards support for all the other things.
Yeah, that's a good point of
it's always sort of a downer that it's not done. It's almost like worse because it's not done and we've been at it for a long time. And I feel like it makes it feel like we're not making progress when we actually are on all sorts of other fronts. But
is it the Heritage Corridor that would know the most about that? I'd love to get like a where are we at on the bikeway?
They've lost the state, it's DOT, it's state planning, it's recreation. That corridor used to have a recreation. They used to be, Donna would know better. But it's that missing the planning. You got to get, if you want it by the river, you got to get the railroad involved. We're not, that stretch is awkward. But Donna,
Yeah, it's the latest word is the local planners are shell shocked from so many false starts as to the route from Millbury to Uxbridge. So there was a CMRPC applied for a grant with the Blackstone Heritage Corridor for lots of money for this express purpose of working with the local communities to find easements, et cetera, and really create the plan, the path. I don't know what's happened with that grant application.
Good question. I don't know if we still have Sarah from CMRPC on the line. Sarah Plotnicki, if you know anything about that grant?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I can reach out to my coworker Carrie. I think she's kind of involved more with this project. So yeah, I can reach out to her and I can email Stephanie with an update afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. It's helpful.
That'd be great.
And if that's a GIS question, that's something that Kaylee is a great GIS whiz that we can put on our back burner as well as a potential. And NVP has fantastic GIS skills. So what else? You have $10 million. What are you spending it on? Online folks, feel free to unmute yourself too.
I think one thing would be equitable access to recreation. Right now, there is no kayak company, a new company that I really know of. There's not very many points on the Blackstone to get in, but even if there was, owning a kayak and being able to transfer that kayak is quite expensive. Great economic opportunity if a folk wanted to start up a business, get grants maybe to make it a little bit cheaper. I know that Padre Island National Seashore in Texas has a really great partnership with a kayak company where they're able to transfer money through a cooperative agreement. But yeah, opportunities like that. Same with bikes. Bikeway is great, but if you live 3 miles from the bikeway and you have to go 3 miles on the street to try to get to the bikeway, and then you have a great bikeway, if you could have some type of opportunity, like I know in Boston they have those blue bikes or something like that I think they're even free. If not, of course, problems come with that. Bikes go into the river and the canal, and then you have a whole different issue. But more equitable access to that.
Would the flashiness of the river be an impediment to that? To the company being profitable because the flow conditions are so variable?
It is a different river in Massachusetts than Rhode Island. Yeah. But in Massachusetts, then you can have opportunities in ponds. Maybe more than the river.
Yeah, for sure.
And the CSO.
And the CSO.
Had to cancel programs because of CSO.
But yeah, that's where kind of the opportunity for a business to work with grants where they at least know that they have money coming in just to keep gasoline in the truck that brings things to the water would be massive.
I just like to go back to the bikeway idea. I'm being shameless right now, but the Blackstone Heritage Corridor has a $1.3 million campaign to raise money, and we have 4 goals. And one is advocacy for the bikeway. We sent out a survey, and the top priority of respondents was get the bikeway done. So the corridor is focused on the bikeway, not constructing it,
but advocating.
There isn't enough money, anywhere for one entity to build it other than DCR. But it's to advocate for the bikeway, to really put pressure on DCR to get it done.
Rhode Island puts us to shame also.
Right. Like we do have a new DCR commissioner, and
we do, right.
And supposedly more, someone who cares a lot and has he come out to the Blackstone,
Yes, we've talked with him, and yes, and of course Jim McGovern is a true advocate. So cool. Anyway.
I just one side. I wonder also if maybe we need to give up on the original envisioned route. Like maybe they need to have some on-site bike path sections if it's impossible to get an easement. I mean, it could still be the Blackstone Bikeway from Worcester to Providence, but be I don't know, I was thinking sometimes you get stuck that it has to be right along the river and there's a parcel of land that's just gonna be impossible to figure out or too expensive.
Bob Billington pushed for it in Rhode Island. It was 10 years going down through the streets of Central Falls, and it didn't make sense, but that emotional, yes, you can do it. So it can be done. But who's to negotiate for that? So that's who's.
Yeah, well, that's great, the corridors.
Yeah.
Championing it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
To find out ways of cutting down on the stormwater litter going into the Blackstone. It's terrible. I never really seen it so bad.
Really? What, this year, right now?
Yeah. All with plastic bottles and nips that are
Yeah.
in the river and collecting and.
It all gets filtered at his site, so.
You know, we're meeting with the Narragansett Bay Commission on April 26th at the Pratt Dam to discuss ways of reducing litter because the litter going into their storage tunnels is causing them a lot of problems.
Oh, wow.
I wonder if part of that is the heavy flows too. So when we have more flashy, big flows, everything floods. It takes more litter from a larger area.
Yeah, there's a lot of homeless encampments along the river, so when you get floods, it goes through their camps and takes all their litter downriver. We have sleeping bags and shoes and everything that gets deposited on our site in Manville from Woonsocket.
Going off of that, so Worcester's Department of Sustainability and Resilience is starting a zero waste master plan for the city. So that is much broader than just litter. But we're hoping that a small portion of it can include addressing litter in waterways. I'm not sure, like it's very early stages of the project. I'm not sure if that is going to be how much of a priority that will be in the final plan. But I'm happy to continue to provide updates, or if anyone has expertise to share on strategies for reducing litter in blue spaces, happy to have a chat.
I'd say talk to Bonnie from the Heritage Corridor. She is
National example, zero waste, reducing waste in waterways has to be a shared goal for lots of people.
Yeah.
What does zero waste mean?
So it's both reducing the amount of trash that is produced and reducing the generation of things that will eventually become trash as a concept. So I can't speak much to the specifics of the plan, but one example would be setting up recycling centers for residents to drop off textiles that can't be recycled any other way. As a small example.
Or put a 50-cent deposit on little nips. People might bring those back.
Has anyone noticed the amount of litter on that grassy knoll over there where I parked? So where does all that go? It's right at the corner. It's loaded with litter on the grass. Is that something that Clark picks up? Or?
I don't think it's their property, so probably not.
It's not, but there's usually a spring cleaning we do, like a, around Earth Day. So I think right now is like the worst it gets. But yeah, University Park, there are lots of stuff in that little pond over there.
Yeah, it's this Saturday. I was just to answer that question about if you had 10 million, what would you do? I'm thinking about and going off your comment, John, and thinking about encampments and just thinking about the housing crisis and specifically the affordable housing crisis in our region and country, and thinking about how often conservation is pitted against affordable housing sometimes, and how can we really unite those causes, equitable access to housing along with green infrastructure, and maybe that is championing and recognizing the developers that are doing both. And I think it's looking into the zoning policies locally and thinking about where and why are only single family homes permitted in certain parts. And I think Worcester is going to be looking again at the zoning policies after like years of them being the same and finding a lot of resistance. And so how are we thinking about affordable high density housing and promoting that along with green infrastructure in that in development?
Yeah, and you're getting a lot of comments online of like, yes, this also. But I know Worcester recently, in the last couple of years, adopted, well,
Now next.
well, that too. I was gonna say the new zoning, equitable zoning change that I'm not thinking of the name of. Anyway,
That's
yeah,
the ADUs, allowing ADUs by right.
Accessory dwelling units.
also that Worcester's doing a lot of these things, I suppose, in steps. So yeah, accessory dwelling units are a fantastic way of increasing housing that are often prohibited everywhere, and it's very slowly becoming more important or more like supported. Yeah, the now next plan is the comprehensive plan for the city of Worcester that hasn't been updated since what, 1984. And it's going to take a big look at the zoning changes, both in terms of climate resiliency and equitable low income.
It's the MBTA zoning requirements.
It's kicking up a little kerfuffle on
Right.
I'm thinking about trash. John, you and I talked about this yesterday. Is, you know, the idea of more of these booms and like end of pipe net things for catching trash closer to the source. And you know, is there some kind of maybe needs assessment we could support? Some kind of assessment of where would those different kinds of devices make the most impact? And if there's interest in that kind of management of trash, I think some areas are not as interested in those, or they don't make as much sense in some areas as in others. But that's something we're considering for that trash action as well.
I know there's the Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association is particularly interested in pretty much exactly what you just described.
Okay.
So if you do have any progress on that, I'd love to follow up.
Sure.
I think the BRWA, Ted Bouvet could probably talk, was trying to develop a map of like more specifically for like cleanup efforts, but like spots where around their area that has more, you know, trash and stuff like that. So
Okay, yeah, that would be great to incorporate.
Yeah, Joy Trahan Liptak had done that a few years ago, kind of around COVID time, with the idea that it was hard to organize cleanups and get everybody together in the traditional fashion. And this was a way that people could go in and identify areas where there was trash that needed to be cleaned up, and then other people could come in and clean it up and report that they had done it. So I believe that that's out there. I'm not, you know, it's kind of a user fed and managed operation. I don't know that it really succeeded the way it could have, but I think it's still a good idea.
the answer you about the $10 million, if I it would definitely take a lot more than this, but like to lead with kind of habitat restoration, green infrastructure, you know, that's kind of what to me seems like a basis, because it's like flood control, you know, mitigation, water quality control, and then that, you know, leads to cleaner water that people want to fish and swim and have access to. But I know that would take probably a lot more than $10 million, but the planning part.
Yeah, doing the plan. I mean, that's definitely the goal eventually of that 604B, right? The first step is what do we know, what do we have now? And then if you pair that with the hydrology understanding, and then you say, okay, this is our flow, these are our floodplains, these are our historic wetlands, this is what's coming in for stormwater and trash, then you can kind of say, we need to focus on these areas. This is an opportunity for a floodplain restoration and a new access point. This is an opportunity to restore that wetland, and
hopefully it would help stop it before it gets to the river.
Yeah. Both along the river and in the watershed, for sure. Yeah. So that's I feel like we haven't done a lot on that in the past few years, but now that I'm feeling a lot more like established, and we're able to get more funding for those big projects. and pass that through instead of just like surviving with staff.
You know, one thing I'm thinking is that there's a supplemental environmental project with some of the tribal entities to look at the bad actor chemicals, heavy metals, whatever that's in the sediments in the river. I believe that's kind of their focus. And I don't know where that is or what the outcome's going to be, but it seems like there's potential as that moves forward to come up with another phase to actually do something about whatever it is that they document.
What else? 10 million bucks. What are you gonna do? Or something that you don't want to address yourself and you don't have the capacity for, but you wish someone else would do. Maybe that's easier.
Economic plan for fish passage on the lower 4 dams. Which hopefully then will go into the rest of the Narragansett Bay and Long Island Sound. So you can also get other communities more invested as well throughout the entire Northeast region.
Love it.
Just building on that, questions about increasing pressures of hydropower as everyone's facing, and questions of water flow rights and additional work that might be able to be done either historically or thinking legally about establishing protections for existing water flow rights or that sort of thing. But that's beyond my knowledge, but seems like it's an emerging issue that everyone's facing.
For $10 million, you can get that answer, I'm sure.
Yeah. Also restoring, right? And a lot of it on the Blackstone is not just protecting what we have, but how can we put it back to how it used to be?
Yeah, just connecting with that, I was at a series of talks about where some folks were talking about land back movements, and just thinking more about as Ted, you just mentioned, the sort of aligning environmental justice questions and toxics in the sediment, but also just potentially emerging questions around indigenous rights to especially water flow. That feels like an emerging question for me about how local tribes get formal authority in that context.
Just to throw it out there because it might help with bikeway planning, but there was the Millbury Electric Dam that the Army Corps studied a partial takedown because they couldn't spend their money creating pools in Fisherville Pond to attract habitat. So we shifted them to Millbury Electric, a partially dam that is impeding recreational use. Did a detailed study. I think it was going to be $4 million. And so if you had $1 million with a partner ready to go, and National Grid was at the table, but National Grid insisted on full demolition. So that was going to take like a $3 million to a $9 million. Who's the local partner for the 40% match? A little bit of money that then would kick in all the stuff. Army Corps couldn't go there because cost benefit wasn't good enough. However, if someone could negotiate with National Grid to provide an easement for the bikeway on their other side of their land, it would take schmoozing, but it needed money and willing. So I don't know, it needs people to make those.
And they were like, what, $13?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yes, that was years ago.
Yeah.
But I think it's a bigger question too of, how do you decide which dams you want to focus on that you can potentially remove? And how do you get the local support? And I mean, one thing there, I think you guys have heard all about the Narragansett Bay Dam Atlas that Emily Vogler worked on. So that's another of my goals, is doing that next step of like, okay, now we have all of this data. Now let's analyze it, right? How do we figure out which ones are going to have the least pushback that we know the owner of, that would make a big impact if we removed it? Or maybe we start small and say, there are 3 dams in this river that hardly are dams at all. You can shoot them, you can pop right over them and in certain flow conditions. Some of them are rubble in the water. They're not even a dam anymore. Maybe we start there and take those out. But there's so many opportunities there. Other topics that folks want to talk about?
Spending money.
Yeah. Or plans, you know, what's something, maybe it's not a project so much as what's a plan to move forward? Is it that wetland restoration plan? Is it the green infrastructure plan? Is
I
it?
just see a challenge from a policy, stormwater and what is required in a permit. And I see it elsewhere. It's a phosphorus control plan. And why isn't it required in all phase 2 communities? That's what's causing all the nutrient in the impoundments. They're doing it elsewhere. I know it's going to be expensive to do, but it's so how to encourage that? I think it's required to some degree in like Bellingham, Franklin, and Milford is like in the Upper Charles. And so I thought it was coming soon, but it's kind of held up in court, I guess. Or I don't know. I don't know what's holding up the issuance of enhanced stormwater.
That's a Mass Rivers question.
Probably.
What about harmful algae? That made me think about that as an issue. What
Worcester's got that in covered.
got it. Yeah,
We're trying.
yeah.
So what about harmful algae?
Well, we have an action to reduce frequency and duration of public exposure to harmful algae and toxins. So I think that could incorporate a lot of different activities. That could be monitoring, it could be public communication, or it could be attacking, sources of these blooms. So, is there something in particular that you're struggling with any of those avenues?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge, honestly, is like climate change and stormwater pollution. We know that excess nutrients and rising temperatures are the biggest contributors to harmful algae blooms. So, the Lakes and Ponds program we're starting to move as much as we can towards addressing non-point source pollution. And I think there's definitely decent momentum within the Blackstone for that as well. As far as monitoring, our program runs the Worcester Cyanobacteria Monitoring Collaborative, which is the Worcester branch of the CMC that is, I guess, established by EPA. I don't actually know that much about the EPA level CMC, but we have citizens or residents, community members monitor at ponds in Worcester, but in communities close by as well, outside Worcester too. And so one of the things that we're able to do with volunteer collected data is produce a bloom risk sort of estimate and rating. And that can be useful in guiding management actions within Worcester for some of our smaller, well, I guess kind of like an early warning indicator. We're not able to take any management actions outside of Worcester, of course. So one of the things we're hoping to do is work with municipalities that have volunteers sampling already to sort of have an education session and be like, hey, like our volunteers are collecting these data. This is what it means. This is what you can do. Management for algal blooms can be pretty expensive. If you have a bloom about to occur, you apply alum to a lake or pond, which can prevent bloom conditions if you catch it early enough. If you have too many cyanobacteria, you can apply copper sulfate, which will kill cyanobacteria, but can also be quite expensive. And so conversations with Kate McPherson, she was saying like so many communities in Rhode Island don't have the capacity to do any of that. So I mean, maybe some of some ways to take action besides addressing sources would be seeing if other communities are interested in expanding CMCs and volunteer programs that way. And then education with municipalities. I know Worcester's very lucky to have a Lakes and Ponds program in the first place. I don't know of any other municipalities that have staff members dedicated to this. So that's, yeah, I think staff capacity is a big challenge in that as well. That's great.
Are there any other topics that folks wanted to bring up or address? We have about like 15 minutes before we'd planned on transitioning into updates, but if we finish the conversation, that's okay.
Is there a chance we could just be reminded of the 20 action steps from the original assessment?
Do you want the assessment thing itself?
I could look that, bring that up if you want the whole list of the needs assessment.
Yeah, well, aren't there like 20? I just was
Well, those
thinking
are the
that
20, but they're
that's
broken into 5 different groups, right?
Bring the, I could bring up the 20.
Can you get it in each chat?
I think so. I know it's on your website.
BlackstoneCollaborative.org/report. You'll get there.
I was thinking of just the list, but you all know it better. I just wanted to be reminded, oh yeah, what about that? You know?
Sometimes it's nice to see it all in
While
one
we're pulling that up, I have a comment on the green jobs program. I think if progress does continue down that route, I think it'd be really helpful to consider the target. Maybe most of the opportunity, maybe not, could be to address and maintain public green infrastructure. You know, municipalities own a lot of lands and hopefully lots of opportunities for green infrastructure, and they're typically the ones paying to maintain it. So are we trying to train DPW employees in maintenance? Are we trying to create like a company that DPW can hire to maintain their infrastructure? Those are just some of the questions that came up in my mind when talking about that.
Or the lesson learned, Kate, I think we did a great planting around one socket, and the DPW came around and looked all the vegetation. So, and then all the towns that hire high school kids to mow all their cemeteries, are there opportunities there? Yes, there are, but it's gonna take some effort. But yeah, that's where the jobs are.
Groundwork programs have made a lot of headway in that, and you know, I think they're maintaining other people's projects as well as their own. So those are cool models.
The Winnesquatucket. They're doing it.
Yeah.
There's a list. I know the list. I can't quite read it.
I know, I'm trying to figure out.
I'm trying. We make it a little bigger.
Sure, I can. I just have to.
What document is that in? Are you?
That is here. I somehow went into a full screen mode. There we go. Okay, now I should be able to see
yeah.
Zoom.
On the
Plus sign in the top
middle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ah,
I think I can go a little more.
a little more.
All 20 minutes. Is that good enough?
Yeah. If you can share your screen
I
again.
will. Come on up.
Okay. Sure.
Watershed.
I know they're not like the easiest to read. This was like week 1 in the program. I made that, and I don't like it anymore. So let's change it.
But then we keep getting to say, we did it.
Yeah.
Well, number 4, an education strategy that informs and energizes its public. Fishable and swimmable, that kind of was our effort. I'm not quite sure, you know, what education, non-point source management.
Yeah. That was written about ZAP, so that's one of the ones that I'm like, we did it, we're done. But education strategy is never done, right? It's you can expand that and do more things. I think part of this as well is, you know, you happen to have me and Kaylee as your coordinators for the collaborative, and if there's this question of like, is the collaborative doing this or are partners doing this and we're helping you support it? Because if no one's doing it now, there are certain things like I'm never going to do a green jobs program. We have to hire someone to coordinate that effort and find out who's doing it and do a better job. If you want us to do an education strategy, I am not your person. We would have to hire someone or say, Mass Audubon, we're going to give you money to do this, or someone else, right? So there are certain things that you're just never going to get from us because it's just not my area of expertise. So it's a question of like, do we need capacity to be able to provide that to you? Or is there someone existing that's doing a better job that we can support and we need to like loop them in better? So the Heritage Corridor, for instance, I'd love to be a closer partner. They're really, really, really wonderful, but I don't work with them as much as maybe we used to or we
Like
could.
for advocating and
Right. So there's
pushing for action on some.
yeah, but if that's part of this too, if certain things are really important, you know, maybe MVP funds that program directly. It doesn't have to fund us, but
Needed to fishable, the Rhode Island Department of Health and Rhode Island DEM has said that you can eat the fish in Rhode Island.
It's a success. Hey, we can.
it doesn't say that.
Well, the state is.
Right.
and Just don't eat the skin, the eyes, or the guts, just stick to the fillet.
Or certain species.
And don't eat the bottom dwellers like catfish, carp, or suckers.
And don't cross into North Smithfield to. Or then it's not safe enough.
That feels like too many caveats for me. Okay.
But there's, for equity, there are certain residents that can't afford fish, so.
That's right. It's probably in the long run, maybe better for them to get the protein that way than I'm not a health scientist. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. That's a really interesting campaign that I would like to explore though, because that it just seems
We got a brochure about it. We haven't printed it yet, but.
yeah.
Probably wait for.
No, I do wonder if the green jobs need for training and development could be something that almost a separate collaborative could be put together where, you know, maybe the chamber helps with their green core reaches out to the technical high schools, maybe reaches out to DPWs in different towns to find out what sort of trained expertise they need. I don't know, I just got thinking that, you know, it is sort of a new field and there's a lot of opportunity, and maybe there's some consultants or landscape companies or people who are actually doing it or getting hired. So you'd have this public-private mix of folks focused on green infrastructure expansion and development.
It sounds like it's something we can noodle on a little and try and figure out what are the next steps to get there and who to bring in and how to do that. It's come up a lot.
What about those LED organizations? We're always looking for people to do green projects. Maybe they have engineers involved.
Yeah.
In the organizations anyways.
Yeah, definitely some people from LEED. So LEED is a little bit of everything of like your sustainable building materials, your practices, your
Not much in
energy
sight
consumption.
plan, like one or
It's a little less on site plan. Yeah, I would say that your landscape architects are a really good partner for this, and we work with the Gretchen, Massachusetts. Yeah.
Boston Society of Landscape Architects.
Right, which is really like the New England chapter. It's not just Boston.
Western Mass and Maine. And
yeah, they I think are also a really good potential partner. To loop in. Yeah, we can think more about green jobs. Yeah. Sarah.
I was just thinking about number 19, and this is kind of related to the jobs thing, but just thinking like free and equitable access to use and benefit from waterways. I think has to consider lifeguards. And thinking about Worcester and so many spaces being closed last summer due to lack of lifeguards, as well as cyanobacteria. And
like wasn't Indian Lake Shore Park closed for most of the summer?
I think.
And that was because of lack of lifeguards, do you know?
Yeah, but the city has hired that out this year. So we're hoping that will provide, like, make it easier to
For all waterways or just Indian Lake in particular?
for all of the city lifeguards, it will be done by a third party.
Really?
Instead of the city. So
Great.
We're hoping that will be more
What a good
constant
solution.
coverage.
So is that a contract with the Parks Department to do it that way?
Yeah, the Parks Department is contracting it out.
You know, with who?
Yeah, it's I think with the YMCA.
Oh,
great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That
It
might
is.
help address your concerns, Sarah. Really.
I would also say expanding the times. I know that you see a lot of people swimming before. I think it's like July 1st it usually starts, right?
Yes, and it ends really. It's
Yeah.
and climate change. It's hot into September, and people.
Right.
And students get out in like May or June. So you're doing a good job. It's gonna keep pushing the city.
The hard thing is it's more expensive to sub it out. So I don't know. That'll create a challenge for expanding coverage. But if we get public advocacy, maybe we can get money. Yeah, it's so much about the public support and push.
Is it been announced, or how do we applaud that? Because that's fabulous. And for all the reasons you were typing, Sarah, equitable access.
It has, yeah, it was announced. I'll look.
Okay. It was at a city council meeting or a parks commission meeting?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'd love to track it down.
You know how that impacts lifeguard pay? Because I think that was the big issue in terms of like the state not earning as much.
Worcester paid a lot
city.
less than what other cities were paying.
I don't know what the pay rate is.
Yeah.
But I know before it was contracted out, the goal was to raise the pay rate because Worcester is like losing lifeguards to like go work at the state beaches like in Sigmund. So yeah, also a huge issue.
That's great.
But yeah, I'll follow up with you on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Fear of the month is really good.
Well, anybody else want to call out one of these needs? Y'all. Good.
Unfortunately, they're kind of so broad.
I know. That's the struggle.
I think that the education strategy can also kind of transform into getting the youth involved in caring about nature and the river and the watershed. John shared a great TED talk that was about the awe of water and kind of inspiring people to. Yeah, it was great. John, you probably have that bookmarked, I'm sure. Yeah, I think I've gotten that email 3 times. But yeah, I think one way that other places do it, and I'm sorry that my background is just so much national park that I'm like, this national park does this, so everything should be like. But Salem Maritime has a great relationship with Essex Heritage, where they have a program called the Future Leaders that bring in high school kids and college kids during the summer for an internship program, which can't be done in a national park service because you can't pay interns. However, it's paid from the Heritage Corridor, and then brings them into the parks to be able to learn about what's going on in the parks. Not saying that the Park Service should be taking on all these people. We have a very small amount of land. However, if other organizations were to then do this exact same thing. So the Heritage Corridor would also be having more volunteer hours coming in because you can count those as volunteer hours. You'd be able to help out places like RIDM or Massachusetts Parks. I don't even know what CR. Yeah. But yeah, to be able to get them more people, but also incentivize these younger people to actually care about it because they're also getting paid to show up to a job for 4 or 5 hours a day. And care about that. I know that I was a future leader, which again is why I care. But also the people in my class, one is now a archivist at Simmons. One is now the head of the Future Leader program for Essex Heritage. So he went on to actually really go all the way through. But there are people that work around the country now that were future leaders that got involved in parks. Doesn't have to be a national park, but parks itself to care about the area, care about the history, and get paid a decent little wage while you're doing it during the summer. So I think that there is probably good grant opportunities that groups can come together to be able to fund this, to then help grow the advocacy from the younger population as well. So it doesn't die out the caring about the river.
I would add to that, just getting younger people out onto the rivers, onto the trails, into the green spaces, just to experience, enjoy them, and appreciate them and value them.
Yeah.
Even right here in Worcester, you run into like lifelong residents of the city that aren't aware of all the green spaces we have right here in the city. It's almost like if it's in your own backyard, it can't be that good. So you just
absolutely.
Yeah.
What you said about the internship program, I like to mention this every time I have a meeting of people, just so that to make sure that everybody knows NBEP funds internships for our partner organizations. And these are open to any, well, not just our partners on our steering committee, but anybody in the watershed looking for interns, and we can either host them through Roger Williams University, which is our host institution, or you can hire whoever you want. But we have those funds every single year, and it's exactly like you said, it's for developing future leaders. It's also for providing services to our partners. So we have those funds every year, and if you are looking for someone to help, please reach out to us anytime.
Yeah, to go off that, I benefited from those funds. I interned with the collaborative, and absolutely kicked off my career in water. So if you have any like intern-ish people who are interested in more, you can like propose, hey, like let's design a project and we can go look for funding for you. So I had the time to like do an internship and didn't have to work full time over the summer. So absolutely recommend the program. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. We should have you do a testimonial.
I know. Katie was also like the best intern ever, so.
Haley.
She's not an intern.
I thought you started as an intern. I thought you started, oh, sorry.
Volunteer.
Yeah.
She had a student project.
Just to lament that we've lost a reporter and newspapers. I'm John Moylan from Worcester. So in Rhode Island, you still have that guy, Frank Carini. And so that's what we need, or I don't know how to share the word or share the stories kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you want to mention 41 North.
Yes, I will mention that. And actually that can kind of just segue into me wrapping this up. So as part of this document, which tends to be pretty dry, it's interesting to the people who are really invested, but we're invested in trying to get some other people to get eyes on this. And so we are partnering with Rhode Island Sea Grants 41 North magazine, which right now is only distributed in Rhode Island. Let me see if I can. It's only distributed in Rhode Island, but it's fantastic. It's a free magazine that they do twice a year, and it's all stories about water and people who work with it, people who love it. And they have historically mostly focused on coastal stories, but I approached them about doing stories that are related to the kind of driving stories behind the development of this 10-year plan. And so their spring issue is going to be focused on stories. Several of them are Blackstone related. So we have one on the 4 lower dams. We have one on access in the Blackstone. We have a couple stars in the room that are going to have photographs. And
we're not going to publish the photo of him falling in the river. That's for internal use.
But anyway, so they distribute this magazine for free in Rhode Island. They print like 10,000 copies, but we're going to fund printing more of it this time so that we can bring it into Massachusetts as well. So it expands their readership into Massachusetts, which they're interested in because it's, of course, the Narragansett Bay watershed is 60% in Massachusetts. And for us, it gets us a much broader readership that's connected to this plan. So we're going to, in addition to having it in the magazine, we're going to co-publish it along the stories and the photographs along with this plan, just to try to make it more readable and interesting and engaging for more people.
So is it available electronically?
It will be. Yep. So 41 North, that's a good question about when 41 North. I feel like the magazine comes out first and then they put the stories online. But maybe, Steph, we can work together to get those copies that we get kind of distributed amongst this group. That would be awesome. Okay, so the next steps for this document, we're trying to do more of these meetings with watershed organizations. This was fantastic today. It's like definitely way more than I was hoping for even. So thank you so much. We're trying to do more of these across the whole geography. So, try to meet with our other, our Taunton partners, our Wood Pawcatuck partners as well. And just try to get more of these geographic specific priorities to put into the plan. We are working with a writer, or we will be, to draft text. We'll be doing review, kind kind of at the end of this year. So if you want another chance to look at the text that we've drafted, it'll be open for public comment for at least a couple months at the end of the year. And we'll be sure to publicize that. And then early next year, mid next year, we'll get the whole beautiful thing published. And that will definitely be mostly online. So those are the next steps. But if at any point you're interested in providing more input or seeing more details on what we're developing, please just reach out to me. Happy to talk about this anytime. I think with that, I'll just wrap it up and say thanks again. Thank you.
Awesome. So for the last 15, 20 minutes or so, I just wanted to go back to our like regularly scheduled programming. Just if there are any updates that folks want to share online in the room, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Raise your hand. We have a ton of updates for you as always in our notes. So we'll get those out to you. Anything that folks want to share? Yeah, Peter?
Yeah, Olsey's on board. She came to us excited about, she had attended a 319 RFR. And this year, for the first time in Massachusetts, 319s are not requiring a 40% match. This time there's extra focus on environmental justice communities. And so umbrellas come down, so we can't ask specifically, but the way that I read EPA guidance is for environmental justice communities, there are certain exemptions, and we are hoping such an exemption would allow a planning only 319 to look at Cook's Pond and the flows and really develop a model to inform management acts and to focus on education and outreach to the larger community as well, where it's going to be interesting, the process, working with Cook's Pond, which is a private entity with trails going right through it. But I don't think they're maybe a little leery of outside people using the pond. So I see it as an educational opportunity. And so we're going to be struggling together to, the grant is due the end of May 25th. So the next couple of weeks, we would love partnerships for outreach and education. I think that's going to be the bulk of the grant. So we're looking the Greater Worcester Land Trust with collaborative, Worcester State, the city. So it's an ongoing process. Elsie, you want to say anything quickly?
Oh, you're on mute, Elsie.
You're muted.
Sorry. I think you said it all, Peter. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Because we need more advocates like her. She is really wanting to stand up and push. So we got to support them.
Yeah, great.
We have the spring migration parade coming up on May 19th from 1 to 4. Hope everyone can make it. It'll be a good time.
And actually on that note, if anyone wants to come, I'm sorry, steal your fish. So we have these beautiful fish. So we have an event next Friday at Friends of the Blackstone in Cumberland where there'll be a couple different activities. You can color a fish and cut it out and make it into like a little wand with glitter and sparklers and all the fun little pom-poms, whatnots, to march in the parade. But also we're having these paper plates so everyone can color like a scale of a paper plate and decorate it. And then my really artsy, wonderful sister, not me, is going to be putting all of those paper plate scales together into a huge fish that will have like 3 or 4 people carry this fish in the parade, and we'll like stuff it with newspaper or something. So it'll be really fun. We will have wine and snacks, and my sister's baking, which you don't want to miss her baking. It's a free event. We'd love for you to come. So it's from 3:30 to 7 at Friends of the Blackstone, 100 New River Road in Manville.
Neat.
Yeah. You don't have to register, encourage it so we have enough wine for y'all, but
National Parks Week's coming up. Sorry, National Park guy again. But just to celebrate that, we do have a cleanup, as I'm sure everyone else does, coming up on April 27th. And then after, which is what I really want to say, is we have a VIP appreciation event from 1 to 3:30, I believe it is, at Slater Mill. Molly Cardoza might have reached out to you folks when it comes to tabling, because we might have volunteers who want to volunteer more, or if you want to just be a volunteer and show up and eat some food, because there's actually going to be free food and drink there, non-alcoholic, because it's in a national park. But would love to see anyone there. If you want to come earlier, we got cleanups going on at the site. If you want to be able to help that out, I think we got some furniture that we're trying to set up too. So bunch of stuff, but please be there to get some snacks and for us to say thank you.
And also tomorrow at NPS at 4 p.m. is a water dance. So
yeah, sure.
I don't know who's the best person to describe that.
Sure. Yeah, so we were contacted by a dance company, and they were really inspired by Kitticook Speaks, which is the production that John and Bruce were involved with, that video of the perspective of the river, from the perspective of the river. So they found that really inspiring. So every 2 years, there's something called a water dance that happens at the same time around the world. So this group wanted to do a water dance at Slater Mill. So that'll be happening at 4 p.m. tomorrow, and they'll be using audio from Kitticook Speaks, and it's a really cool project. We're hoping to also have them in the parade too, on the spring migration parade.
Anything else? I didn't see any. David, yeah.
Just to let people know, in our region, the MVP 2.0 grant that involves the Mumford River watershed is sort of lumbering forward. We're forming a core team and looking for, we'll be forming a seed project. We'll be deciding on a seed project within the next several months. The other local item that actually I think applies a lot to the discussion of this long-term plan is there's a local group that's collaborating with a private landowner, and it's a collaboration with a private landowner and a local campground to do restoration of a cold water fishery. And it's a small section, but it might provide a really good model. It's volunteer effort. It's collaborating with the local land trust to sort of coordinating it. We're working with Mass Fish and Wildlife also. So it's a sort of a conglomeration that may have a very small but definite impact on the water quality in terms of fish for this particular brook. And it's called the Foxfire Farm Optimists, named after the farm that is taking place on and the general attitude that we all have. So we'll keep you updated on that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I would add, that sounds great. And then just adding on April 30th, Tuesday, I'm helping to host a student and a researcher from UMass Amherst who's gone and done a series of interviews with community leaders that are striving to respond to combined sewer overflow in communities facing environmental justice concerns. Steph Covino is one of those folks that will be in this in that film. We're hosting a screening on Tuesday at the 30th at 2 p.m. at the Green Island Neighborhood Center, and then again at 5 p.m. at Holy Cross. And I will share a finalized flyer once I get that from my department. But yeah, it would be wonderful if folks wanted to come and talk about these broader issues in that setting.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce, for mentioning that one too. Pretty excited to see that. And it's not just Worcester, it's kind of statewide, but.
Is that what we got a notice about? They said she had the date wrong and she.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
30th, 2 p.m. and 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Anything else? Hey,
Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Darcy, for that amazing discussion. And for everyone in person, please feel free to take all the snacks because we always overfeed. And hope to see you all in person again sometime. We'll get you some we might follow up twice just to give you kind of like the notes and then follow up again with the discussion kind of summarization, just so you have all the links that we didn't go through today.
Is your intent to keep in person or go back to Zoom, or you don't know? You're gonna figure out what you
Yeah,
want to do.
we'll probably.
I like in person.
No, we'll probably continue a like a
hybrid. What's is that a lot more awkward?
So let's plan for Zoom next month. I would love to do more in person. I would love to move it around the watershed too. It's just this challenge of like having a reliable hybrid is very, very, very hard.
This is so good.
We've had some bad hybrid models that make me very scared. So yeah, but it's good feedback. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you at our next meeting, which is on May 17th. May 17th. All right. Take care, everybody.
Wow.